Welcome everybody to Go Local Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. Lots of news this morning. One of them, take a look at the analysis. Could a Texas-style energy emergency hit in Rhode Island? See what Jeff Grabowski, the former CEO of Deepwater Wind, who built Rhode Island's offshore wind project, says about it. He's now head of U.S. Wind. Rhode Islander, grew up in Cumberland. He's got big insights into what the dangers are for Rhode Island and what the problems were down in Texas. Speaking of people who know Texas, Cortney Nicolato, she's the head of the United Way. Cortney, thanks so much for joining us.
Josh, I'm always welcome. I always love the opportunity to talk with you. And yeah, Texas is something that everyone I think in Rhode Island should pay attention to. I lived in Texas for 13 years, and I can tell you it's a tragedy to see what's happening down in my second favorite state.
Yeah, I mean, dozens of dead, billions and billions of dollars worth of damage. And this is what you call an avoidable tragedy. Yep. And it's not the first one in Texas, triggered by some extreme cold and undermining the entire energy infrastructure.
Yeah, and natural disasters are real in Texas. And I think, we've said that in our home when we lived in Texas, we had 3 roofs in 7 years. And that is because when you have hail the size of golf balls hitting your roof, it's real. So climate change, issues with the system, there's lots going on, but, watching the level of damage, watching friends and family who have oxygen concerns and all of that, like just the risks that have been they've dealt with and the trauma that they've dealt with over the past week is really sad to see.
Well, let's go to an issue very close to home, a significant issue. On March 2nd, Rhode Island voters are asked to go and vote. The questions before them are 7 bond issues totaling $400 million. They range from a host of different things, from improvement at the colleges and university to open space. One of these issues is critical to you as head of United Way. You've been working on the issue of low-income housing. Let's start with the bond issue. How much, and then where's the money going?
Yeah, great question. So United Way is in support of all 7 bonds, but particularly we are advocating for question number 3, which is focused on community development and housing in Rhode Island. This is a $65 million bond focused on not just building new homes, which I will tell you there is a ton of shovel-ready jobs that will build safe and affordable housing here in the state of Rhode Island, but also for preserving our homes. I think you and I have spoke about before that Rhode Island has the oldest housing stock in the country. And so we have to do a considerable amount of investments in the community to ensure that the houses we do have and the units we do have remain in the system for years to come. And so 45 million of that will be focused on that. The other $20 million focused on community development. So various different programs and services that support safe and affordable housing, utility assistance, rental assistance, and other programs within the state.
Okay. How does the money get used? How does it get doled out? Who's the recipient? Who's the developer of these low-income housing opportunities? And what's the timeline for it all to work if the voters approve it?
Great. And we're hoping the voters do approve it. If you haven't already submitted via mail ballot or attended early voting, you can do that on the day of as well. But yes, so the process is actually pretty seamless and the money can go very quickly. And so there is a Housing Resources Commission here in the state of Rhode Island who passed bonds, which we have been advocating strongly for every housing bond that has come through. But the Housing Resources Commission, what they do is they evaluate the jobs. They then get those dollars out. And as I mentioned, there are a considerable amount of shovel ready. So they've done a significant amount of work working with potential commercial real estate agents or various different organizations throughout the state that are interested in building safe and affordable housing and meeting the threshold of what that safe and affordable housing threshold is. And so that dollars go fairly instantaneously as soon as the bonds are purchased into the Housing Resources Commission. They are continuing to follow the process that they do. We've built or supported new and preserved homes, about 3,200 units in and through this Housing Resources Commission in 34 communities. And so that this will build the momentum surrounding that very process. So we're anticipating the bonds, I think in talking to Treasurer Magazine, are like within days. And so, this will make an incredible impact in a very, very important time in housing in Rhode Island.
So let's talk about some of the criticisms of bonding for these things. One of them is, listen, you're spending unnecessarily. You've got to borrow money. You pay long-term interest on this. It's going to, if it's 65 million, that might cost you 90 million over the course of 20 years, depending on how they get sold and what the financing structure is. Shouldn't there be an alternative? Shouldn't we have this built in rather than borrowing money to do this?
Yeah, in most states, what you find is it's a combination of two things. One is bonds, and because that does allow us to move quickly, it also rates are low, and we are paying back our bonds pretty significantly in the state on a routine basis. And so that is important. But I often say, and this is to not dinging on anybody particularly, but bonds are band-aids for
Cortney,
this issue.
Cortney,
Yes.
Ding away. Like, what do we got to do to get a permanent source of financing?
I know, and it's an incredible issue. So to give some comparison, in Rhode Island, we invest per capita in housing $11.31. In Massachusetts, that same per capita investment is $96.07. In Connecticut, it's $81 or $87. In Vermont, it's $58. Like, holy moly, we are so far behind the needle. Bonds are important and critical to the infrastructure and building infrastructure and capital investments such as this. However, it can't be the end-all be-all solution. And unfortunately, when it comes to housing, it has been the end-all be-all solution. We need a permanent funding stream as well to complement this kind of insurgence of investments in building safe and preserving safe and affordable housing in the state. And so when we think about a permanent funding stream, we were very grateful to Governor Raimondo, who put this as a priority area last year. And we need a permanent funding stream in the state of Rhode Island. Those numbers that I just shared from Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Vermont, they have a permanent funding stream as well as a bond, a routine bond to help build the infrastructure in the groundswell of these units. These are for veterans, seniors, folks who have entry-level positions in our state. These are critically important houses, and specifically workforce housing is incredibly important as we're trying to recruit new companies to come to the state. They need to know that there is good education and that there's a place for their employees to live and live comfortably. We're watching increases of housing costs up 12.9%, I think, year over year from, it was the last number I saw come through. So we're having all of this increase, but it's because we have an incredible lack of supply in the state of Rhode Island. The last number I saw from Rhode Island Housing said we were 25,000 units short in affordable housing here in the state of Rhode Island. And so you think about that, our last bond was supportive of 3,200 units. The bond can't be the end all be all.
Yeah, listen, it is a crisis. In January, the median price of a single family home on the east side of Providence, now remember, the east side of Providence may include Blackstone Boulevard, but it also covers the Summit neighborhood and right, much more moderate area, was $865,000. That was the median household price of the units sold during the months of January. There's no inventory. So it's a bidding war for every time a house goes on the market. Let me just go quickly to the bond. You're asking voters to go in and approve $65 million. The other organizations are asking for another $335 million to $400 million. That's right on the cusp of what Rhode Island can afford. At a time in which there's an unknown as to what our economic future is, and we're looking at in the next coming budget a $500 million budget shortfall that may get replenished through the Biden administration's efforts, but that hasn't passed. It only takes one Joe Manchin to go wayside, and That's in big trouble. So is this a responsible expenditure of $400 million for the voters to approve $400 million?
I think it is. And I think, Rhode Island, RIPAC has come out and said it is. There's a number of studies that say the timing is right. COVID and the aftermath of COVID is here, and will continue to be here, I think, for years to come. And, I look at, there's a number of bonds that I'm either, supportive of or involved in some way. And we need to ensure that our community is set up for success. And one of the things is we need to bring more students into our universities, into our colleges. We need to invest more money. Putting my URI trustee hat on, and I see the importance, and not my United Way, so take one off, put the other on. But we need to ensure that these investments are allowing us to be competitive. The looking at our infrastructure and building a Quonset that really helps bring new and drive new businesses in. We need this economic support. But from a social need perspective, things like having more places where kids, families can access childcare is really important. And that is question 5. So, while I am not a fan for spending erroneously or anything in that regard, we do need to put this influx of capital into our community so that we can be competitive, we can be strong, and we can handle what's going to be the next phase of COVID, which I think will be a downturn in our economy, continued loss of jobs, continued high rate of evictions, if we don't put proper investments in place.
Cortney, talk a little bit about why now? Why not wait till the next election cycle? There seems to be some urgency by some of the advocates saying these are critical to happen right here and now in order for Rhode Island's economy to be able to stabilize.
Yeah, and because of COVID, there was a timing issue, and so these bonds were. The hope was that they would have been in the presidential election in November. Looking at what the needs, so the needs have been there, and because of our legislature and some of the things that happened because of COVID, having to shut down all of that kind of stuff, we couldn't go through the proper channels quick enough to get it on the November election. And so there was lots of conversation about, do we wait? Do we do it now? What does that look like? And it came to the realization that because, in housing, such a great example, we have seen 400, 500% up increase in evictions. We've seen a considerable amount of supply issues. So I'll give you an example. There's an incredible person that I know who's lives in a 3-decker apartment, and she has been paying her rent. And she's been able to, and that's been awesome. The problem is her landlord, this is an investment property for landlord, and landlord's saying, I can't afford to be living in a separate space. I have to, and I'm moving in to your home. And she received an eviction notice, and going through all of the options, she cannot find an option. So, these are men and women who are working hard, who have worked hard in a career and have fell on tough times as a result of COVID-19. We cannot continue to wait another day without putting additional investments into housing in our community. I often say housing is healthcare. Housing is education. How can we ensure a child can focus in the classroom if they have no idea where they're going to lay their head that evening? And far too many Rhode Island kids are in that situation today. So we can't wait. It's got to move, and it's got to move quick. And there's no way we could have pushed this to even November. So I'm grateful to the legislature for making that commitment to move forward and making the commitment to getting this in a special election.
Last question. Are you worried about who's going to show up to vote, who's voted, and whether or not you can get the right folks who are advocates out to be able to support this? Or will people just be, hey, I don't know what tomorrow brings for me and my family. I don't know that the state should move forward.
Yeah, it was one of the things that we saw early on that we were going to, kind of was a priority area for us. as we were thinking about the advocacy of this work was it wasn't just about informing folks of the importance of the bond. It was about also helping folks understand the importance of them in the middle of March or beginning of March, going and voting. And there's no elected, right? There's no,
Office
any type of
holders,
local elections or office holders or anything like that, which is traditionally where a bond would fall, right? Because of the volume of folks who come for those types of elections. I think what we've seen is we've seen a good number of folks complete a mail ballot. And so I think that that's going to be our biggest opportunity. And I think last number I saw was maybe 95,000 plus folks who have completed that. And that was like a week ago. And so also we have early elections and then day of elections. So I think that, Secretary of State Gorbea and the team have made it as simple and easy as possible to participate and be a part of this. I think also COVID has brought to the forefront needs in the Rhode Island community that maybe folks didn't fully understand until now. And so I do anticipate that folks have a different appreciation for the housing crisis we're in, for the childcare shortages that we have, to come and support the bond. So I'm hopeful that each and every one of you that is watching right now to check your local board of canvassers, because early voting is happening right this minute. And I will tell you, having a volunteer poll guy who I'm married to in North Kingstown, it could not be any easier. You're in and out in 2 or 3 minutes. So it is worthy of your time.
Cortney Nicolato, CEO of United Way Rhode Island, thank you so much for joining us. For everybody else, we'll be back at 1:30. Dr. Michael Fine, former Director of Health, going over all the news related to the vaccination program here in Rhode Island and growing concerns about the lack of DNA sequencing here in Rhode Island. There's an expert piece on that in GoLocal as well today. Everyone stay safe. Please, please wear your mask. Let's get through this thing all together. Save a job, save somebody's business. Stay safe. Thanks, everybody.